I take full responsibility for this mistake, and I deeply regret the consternation, the anxiety that was caused by my mistake.
Minister Vivian Balakrishnan says the government acknowledges its error in not stating that TraceTogether data is not exempt from the Criminal Procedure Code. It's official, Malaysia will extend its near nationwide movement control order by another 2 weeks to February 18th. And congratulations to all COVID-19 frontline fighters, the winners of the Straits Times Singaporean of the Year 2020. Good evening, you're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Dylan Ang. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode. In Parliament today, Foreign Minister and Minister in charge of the Smart Nation Initiative, Vivian Balakrishnan, tabled a proposed law that makes clear the police can request to use contact tracing data in investigating only the most serious of offences. The urgent introduction of the bill follows public outcry last month over the use of TraceTogether data by police. Dr. Balakrishnan stressed the legislation is intended to remove any doubt about what can personal contact tracing data be used for.
We acknowledge our error in not stating that data from TraceTogether is not exempt from the Criminal Procedure Code. I take full responsibility for this mistake, and I deeply regret the consternation, the anxiety that was caused by my mistake. In Parliament last month, the Minister for Home Affairs and I stated that the use of TraceTogether data in investigations or criminal proceedings would be restricted to serious offences. This bill before us gives legal force to these statements.
Responding to Dr. Balakrishnan, leader of the opposition Pritam Singh asked if TraceTogether data was vital to solving the 7 categories of crimes outlined in the bill. He noted that users may turn their phone's Bluetooth function off upon entering a building and questioned the overall effectiveness of TraceTogether as a contact tracing tool.
It is therefore open to question whether the efficacy of TraceTogether for contact tracing could be compromised because of the government's belated explanation on the use of TraceTogether data for investigative purposes. To that end, I would like to inquire if the government is able to track the number of users of the TraceTogether app who turn off their Bluetooth function after downloading the app, and separately, who turn it off after gaining entry to a building or premise. The answer to this question will determine whether TraceTogether is working as intended, or whether the government needs to comprehensively review the public buy-in and effectiveness of the TraceTogether app and token.
Lots to digest, but not to worry. We are joined by the Straits Times senior political correspondent Grace Ho. Now, welcome, Grace. We heard Minister Vivian Balakrishnan acknowledge the government's error, before going on to say that these are extraordinary times and exceptional circumstances. What does he mean by this?
So TraceTogether has very much been a cornerstone of Singapore's fight against coronavirus. It helps to have more effective contact tracing, and then that in turn facilitates the easing of restrictions, such as allowing for larger gatherings, and then after that the opening of the economy. So for all this to happen, you pretty much require that TraceTogether has full or almost full national coverage, and right now it's at 80% of the population. But also in that process, as several MPs pointed out in today's Parliament debate, you may have incomplete disclosure of information, sometimes errors or lapses in not informing the public of certain things. And then now, even as today as we speak, layering on top of that, the virus is mutating, it's become more infectious, there's uneven vaccine uptake around the world, and even existing vaccines are not a magic bullet. So you have all these additional vulnerabilities, which then even further accentuates just how important TraceTogether is and how important the uptake of tools such as TraceTogether actually do make quite a lot of sense.
Now, Grace, do you think this will go some way in restoring the public's confidence towards the government?
I think it will, because the explanation given today was quite detailed. Although there will inevitably be certain segments of the population who will still be highly skeptical or even cynical. The fact that there was a 6-month time lag between the government's earlier assurances that the data will only be used for contact tracing and the subsequent clarification in Parliament on January doesn't really help, because some would feel that, okay, this was presented to me as a fait accompli and I'm supposed to just now accept it. But there were three more detailed points today that give some assurance. First, the bill restricts the use of data to contact tracing, and so other law enforcement agencies cannot obtain such data except for investigations of criminal proceedings or serious offences. Second, the government may not use the data for any purpose other than those mentioned, regardless of any other written law requiring or allowing the disclosure of the data. And third, there's a new provision where the minister can specify a date after which this digital contact tracing system is no longer needed. And the data administrator then is legally required to actually delete any personal contact tracing data that's no longer needed. But as Leader of the Opposition Pritam Singh mentioned in Parliament, there are a few remaining questions, such as just how critical is TT or Trace Together really for serious crimes versus all the other array of tools that the police already have at their disposal. And also the fact that some people turn off their Bluetooth or they don't bring out their tokens. So what is the incremental benefit of this? And then, of course, it's a second sort of broader issue about demographics, right? So younger generations of Singaporeans who grew up very acutely aware of data privacy issues, individual rights. If you notice, like recently when WhatsApp published new terms of service, there was a mass exodus of users to alternatives like Telegram, Signal. So there's this whole larger concern about technology and the institutions and how much control they have over them. So some of that concern will linger. Some of that cynicism will remain in some quarters, in the same way that there are people who refuse to be vaccinated in spite of all the evidence to the contrary. So I think for this case, it's already water under the bridge because, this is after the fact. But going forward, it's a question of timing about how the government can perhaps lay out the full suite of information in a more timely, transparent fashion to allay people's concerns even before they have the time to snowball.
I see. Well, many thanks, Grace, for helping us better understand what was debated in Parliament with regard to Trace Together. Now, if the bill passes, the amendments to the law are expected to come into force in the middle of this month. In other news from Parliament, the inconvenience of checking in and out with safe entry at different stores within a shopping centre will soon be a thing of the past once compulsory Trace Together only safe entry kicks in. A single check-in to public venues with either the Trace Together app or token will suffice in the future. There are, however, exceptions. Patrons will still need to check in at establishments where the transmission risk is deemed to be higher, such as at gyms or food and beverage outlets, as people are likely to be in close proximity for long periods of time. An update on the COVID-19 situation here. 19 new cases were reported today. Now, all 19 were imported, with none in the community or workers' dormitories. More details will be released tonight. In recognition of their hard work and sacrifices made in keeping Singapore safe during the pandemic, the Straits Times today announced that 5 individuals who represent the army of people on the front lines of COVID-19 are the Straits Times Singaporean of the Year for 2020. The frontliners received their award from President Halimah Yacob at the Istana.
The Straits Times Singaporean of the Year 2020 award goes collectively to all our frontline fighters in the battle against COVID-19.
That's right. Once again, congratulations to our COVID-19 frontline fighters.
The recipients include NCID nurse clinician Abdul Wahab, swabber Benson Ng, employed under the Health Promotion Board, Certis Quarantine Officer Supervisor Nigel Quack, Duke NUS Medical School's Professor Ooi Eng Yong, who co-developed Singapore's COVID-19 vaccine currently in human trials, and NCID Executive Director Professor Liu Yi-sin. If you'd like to re-watch the whole award ceremony, you'll find it on the Straits Times YouTube channel. In global headlines, Malaysia will extend its near nationwide movement control order for another 2 weeks until February 18th. The decision comes with stricter restrictions after coronavirus infection rates failed to drop since the curbs were reimposed 3 weeks ago. Only several districts in Sarawak will continue to be under a more lenient conditional MCO. Senior Minister for Security and Defence Minister Ismail Sabri Yaakob gave examples of stricter rules such as limiting the number of people allowed in supermarkets. New standard operating procedures for the MCO will be issued by the National Security Council in due time. A day after the military seized power in Myanmar, de facto leader Aung San Suu Kyi's party is demanding that she be freed as soon as possible, along with other detainees, including ousted President Win Myint. The United Nations Security Council will hold an emergency meeting to discuss the situation in Myanmar later today. That's after Washington threatened to reimpose sanctions on the country, calling the coup a direct assault on the rule of law.
We removed sanctions, the United States, I should say, removed sanctions on Burma over the past decade based on progress toward democracy. The reversal of that progress will necessitate an immediate review of our sanctions laws and authorities, followed by appropriate action.
Chinese state news agency Xinhua reported that police have arrested more than 80 people and confiscated over 3,000 fake doses of COVID-19 vaccines. The fake vaccines were made by injecting saline into syringes. According to the report, the suspects may have intended to send the vaccines abroad. The police operation was part of a campaign to combat vaccine-related crimes and was carried out in multiple cities. Now get excited, come February 23rd, Disney Plus will launch in Singapore with over 650 films and 15,000 episodes of content from the Walt Disney Company's iconic brands. They include content from Disney, Marvel, Star Wars, Pixar, National Geographic, and Star. For $11.98 a month, subscribers here can tune in to highly anticipated content that includes WandaVision, The Mandalorian, and Inside Pixar. Time to sit back, relax, and grab some popcorn. And those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below. I'm Dylan Ang. Olivia and Haryanto will be back tomorrow for more stories on The Big Story.